You are listening to WMHW HD1 and HD2 Mount Pleasant Mountain 91.5, a service of Central Michigan University's School of Broadcast and Cinematic Arts. Hello, folks, and welcome in to Episode 2 of Count That Baby and a Foul, a Detroit Pistons show on 91.5 The Mountain, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Anthony Schulte, joined today by Ryan Donnelly. We'll both be with you all season with everything Detroit Pistons. But today, we have some special guests with us. Two of the card guys, Derek Steele and Izaak Haffenden. How are we today, fellas?
I'm doing good. Very happy to be here today.
How you doing, Anthony? I'm so glad to be here.
And I'm Ryan Donnelly.
And that is Ryan Donnelly.
All right, well, today we have a little bit of a recap on Media Day, don't we now?
Yeah.
Ryan, let's start with you. What are your takeaways from Media Day that happened on this past Monday?
My things that I've seen from Media Day is that everybody's satisfied with Monty Williams. From every quote that I've seen, it's just been positive. Like we talked about on Card Guys on Wednesday, is that he'll be tough, but like he'll be there for you. That's like Detroit coaches. Like they're going to go hard on you, but they're also going to take care of you. That's like Dan Campbell. That's also going to be like Monty Williams. Monty likes the guys that he's working with. Monty Williams said about Izaak Thompson, he's going to be an integral part of our team. There's a chance that could happen right away, just based on what we've seen this summer and in camp. That's what he said about Izaak Thompson. He loves Izaak Thompson. Some other stuff that he said about the Pistons front court with Duren, Bagley, Stewart, and Wiseman. We're just going to wait and see who steps up and take it. That's for the Wiseman and Bagley sixth-man battle on the bench.
I think that's going to be a very intriguing battle on the bench, because I said this on one of my stories the other day when it was kind of published that that's the battle going on the bench. I was like, it's good. This Wiseman versus Bagley battle, the winner of the backup center role is going to be the backup center on a contending team. On the contending team. They definitely are, and I personally think it's going to be Wiseman just because he has that experience. He has the championship experience, and I just think Wiseman just has more tools. He's 7 foot. He can shoot the rock. He can handle the ball a little bit, and under Monty Williams, he could be a good leader.
I want to go back to that quote you said really quickly about Monty Williams is going to be there for you, but he's also going to be a hard coach. I mean, look at some of the greatest coaches in Detroit sports history. You look at Jim Leland for the Tigers. You look at Sparky Anderson. You mentioned Dan Campbell being that same way. One of my favorite things to say about Jim Leland is that he was hard on his players and he was a hard-nosed coach, but he also cared about his players and he knew that they were humans and that they had that humanistic aspect. And we saw that a lot from Monty Williams when he was in Phoenix. And when he was coaching the Phoenix Suns, is that he had that humanistic aspect to his players. And he was hard on his players, and he expected a lot from his players. But he also understood that they weren't robots and that they had that humanistic aspect, and they couldn't go 60 minutes of just straight, hard-nosed, 110%.
Absolutely. All right, so I just wanted to say that I'm absolutely ecstatic. I just want to say that I'm absolutely ecstatic that Monty Williams is here. He's a great coach, a great person. And you saw in Phoenix, the dude cared for his players. He made them work hard, but at the same time, he knew they were human. And Phoenix had an identity. They were a great defensive team. And I think that's what Monty Williams is striving to build in Detroit. Like, during Media Day, obviously Weaver said that Detroit's lack of discipline dipped into their defense. Physically, Troy Weaver did believe that this team can match up against any teams. Williams also has seen Duran make significant strides as a defender. I also feel building a defensive identity is important for the Pistons if they want to get back to this championship level we saw only a short 20 years ago. I believe if that Duran can make strides as a shot blocker and a good paint defender, if Isaiah Stewart can be that big physical guy that we can have as our four, and if Izaak Thompson can be a Swiss Army knife as a defender, we will get back to being a good team. I'm ecstatic for this season. I'm excited what we can do defensively. And obviously with a healthy Cade, a healthy Ivy, and obviously some new pieces like Joe Harris, Monte Morris, and of course Marcus Sasser and Izaak Thompson, I'm excited to see what this team can do both offensively and defensively because we got a lot of potential.
I'm really happy that you brought up Cade Cunningham, and that's someone I was going to bring up. Is one of my biggest takeaway from Media Day, and we talked about this when I did sports for News Central. Is this quote from Cade Cunningham saying that he feels 100% going into the season, and he's ready for the challenges that lay ahead.
That's big. That's really big.
That's huge.
We saw what he could do at the point guard as a rookie, and he's only gotten bigger, he's only gotten stronger, he's only gotten faster. He did have, what was it, a stress fracture last year?
Fracture that got him out for the whole year.
So he had to have surgery on that stress fracture. So I'll be interested, especially the first couple weeks into the regular season, to see how much Monty Williams is playing him, but I'm really excited to see that number one option for the Pistons back, and I think that's something they really lacked last season, was having that legitimate number one scoring option.
With Cade Cunningham, you brought up his shin injury on the stress fracture. The former teammate now just signed with the Warriors to try and make the team. Rodney McGruder, better known as around these parts as McGriddles.
Rodney McGriddles.
He had the same injury problem as Cade Cunningham. He had the same stress fracture, and he got a lot of help from Rodney McGruder getting through it, because Rodney McGruder came back, and he was actually very serviceable last season. But also somebody that Cade reached out to was Bam Adebayo. He had the same injury on his shin, and Bam Adebayo helped him a lot too. So it wasn't like this was something Cade wasn't getting through professionally. He got through it very, very well and very professionally. He sought after help. How do I recover mentally and physically? How do I recover from this type of thing? And like you said, he said he's 100%. And that is something that really just, it excites me, because it's like, all right, he has the confidence, beautiful. But what Asar Thompson also said during his press conference, he said Cade seems like a 10-year veteran, not a third-year player that barely had a season last season, basically a second-year player.
Cade hasn't played a legitimate season yet, because you remember, Anthony, he was out part of his first season as well because of injury. So my expectations for Cade, I want him to develop his shot, and I want him to become, as I mentioned, that number one scoring option for Detroit. And I think Monty Williams is going to draw up a lot of plays to make Cade the number one scoring option, especially late in games when you need a bucket. But I also want him to become a lockdown defender. I want him to be known as one of the best defensive guards, and we've seen Monty Williams. We were talking about it off air. Monty Williams being a very defensive-minded head coach, and I think that's really exactly what Cade needs, is that defensive-minded head coach to show him how to lock down these defenders and how to lock down these very good guards at an NBA level.
I want to take y'all back real quick. I'll get to you, Isaac, in a second, but I want to take y'all back on that same topic. You said you want Cade to be that number one option. I personally think Cade's a number two on a championship team. I personally do. Absolutely. With his playmaking and the way he slows the game down to what he wants. It's his game. It's whatever. If he wants to play fast, Cade's going to play fast. If he wants to play slow, it's going to be a slow game. What he does is he attracts the double team. You have a number one option. Either he's going to become the number one option when they double team the number one option, or they double team him and the number one option's wide open off a kick. So, and we saw it last year. Let me take y'all back to opening night. Magic at Pistons. Close game down the end. It was a play that had Isaiah Stewart down in the corner, right? Cade Cunningham, I already knew the ball was going to him and he was going to make a play. What they did is he drove left. It attracted the double team, right? And then he kicks it to Stewart for the wide open corner three. Dagger shot. Pistons win the first game of the year. We left that arena screaming undefeated. We were on top of the world. That's the only. I went to 11 Pistons games last year. The only game I saw us win.
The highlight of our season last year is beating the Magic.
The highlight of our season was open. Now, I would say Warriors
beating
win.
The Warriors was way
beating
better.
the Warriors at home.
And Cade Cunningham's
and the
performance.
Mavericks game with Killian Hayes masterclass.
Killian Hayes overtime masterclass when he dropped 30.
Absolutely.
That was awesome.
Also, Cade Cunningham's 35-point game against the Hawks.
Yes.
That was amazing.
But Cade Cunningham is a Hawks killer. Go ahead, Isaac.
I just wanted to say that according to Isaiah Stewart, that he personally said that Cade Cunningham is great at slowing down the game and getting the shots he wants. So if you give Cade the rock, he's going to make stuff happen. It's either going to be through scoring, giving teammates opportunities, and just overall controlling the pace of the game.
Yeah.
And that's what we need from Cade Cunningham. If you get to the Detroit Pistons a full season of Cade Cunningham running the offense how he wants in Monty Williams' system, he's going to create lots of opportunities for himself. I do think Joe Harris is going to have a great year.
Beef Jerky Joe.
Absolutely.
That's what we're referring to him as.
Yeah.
Is there a story behind that, Anthony?
I went on his basketball reference page, and his first nickname is Beef Jerky Joe, and I'm like, this guy is a Piston.
I just wanted to say, Joe Harris is going to have a great year this year. People are hardcore sleeping on the impact he's going to have. The dude is a shooter. He can shoot.
He's the best percentage three-point shooter in the league at 42.9%. Steph Curry's number 4. Joe Harris is number 1, minimum 1,000 shots. But me and Ryan harped on this. You brought up Monty Williams' system, right? Me and Ryan have talked about this for the past couple weeks. His .5 offense is going to help this team so much. For those of you that don't know what a .5 offense is, we'll explain it one last time. You have .5 seconds to make a decision. Are you going to dribble? Are you going to pass? Are you going to shoot? The triple threat. You have .5 seconds to make that decision. If you don't, have fun sitting next to Monty and talking about it because he's going to take you out the game.
Want to know a player I think is going to absolutely thrive in the system? Jaden Ivey. The dude is fast.
I think Jaden Ivey's going to have a breakout year like you mentioned, Isaac.
Well, I'll tell you what. 3 things need to happen for there to be meaningful April basketball at LCA this year. We need a full healthy year of Cade Cunningham controlling the pace of his offense. Yeah. We need a healthy Jaden Ivey being a good second option and showing a lot of improvements as a shooter, as a passer, and just overall with ball control. Obviously, the third thing is huge. We need Isaiah Stewart, Jalen Duren, and Asar Thompson to develop into 3 very elite level defensive players.
Well, with Isaiah Stewart, you just paid him that money.
Yeah.
Right? You gave him that $15 million a year extension. Very cheap compared to his other 2020 draft mates. But he's the type of player you want to get 12, 13, 14 points and a solid 8 rebounds out of the 4.
Absolutely.
Get a couple blocks, maybe a couple steals a game. That's a lot of game. A couple blocks, couple steals total. We'll call them stocks. A couple stocks a game. And at that point, you get something out of Isaiah Stewart. He's your starting 4. Worst case scenario, 6th man.
I'll tell you what. The moment I saw Isaiah Stewart charge on LeBron in that game in 2021, I said he is a Piston for life. Troy Weaver believes in him. They gave him a bag. He's going to be a big part of this team. And if we want to have a good year, he's going to be a big part of it. Absolutely. I also think Asar Thompson was a great draft pick. Obviously, us Pistons fans had kind of a little expectation in the back of our head that, we're going to tank and we're going to get Wemby. But
Brick for Vic, as I like to say.
Oh, yes. But we got to forget the draft lottery is a thing, and the draft lottery hates Detroit, so we got Asar Thompson. Mm-hmm. So let's think about it. Asar Thompson. The kid can score. He can score. He's a beast. He's athletic. And he's what we need. He's versatile. He's a Swiss Army knife. He has potential to be a poor man's Kawhi Leonard if he actually plays games.
I like that comparison, man. That's a good comparison.
Going back to when you said that Cade.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I do think Asar Thompson is going to be what we thought Stanley Johnson was going to be.
I do agree with that. That is a hot take. I like that. But going back to what Anthony said, that Cade Cunningham would be a number 2 option on the team. If we had Wembanyama, he would be our number 1.
I wanted Victor.
I really wanted
bad.
When I saw that the Pistons got the number 5 pick, I literally had to isolate myself for that draft.
I started crying.
Oh, I turned the draft. The draft lottery special? Man. I turned that off. I didn't even see San Antonio get the number 1 pick.
I just had to stop and think. I mean, with or without Wemby, the Pistons have a bright future.
Yes. Literally, when the draft lottery happened, it was our school's water wars. I had to isolate myself for that, plus the draft lottery. So, I did not care that whole day. And I was just like, oh, gosh, today's the day we get Wemby. We got number 5. Asor's great. I do agree. He's going to be on that same level as Kawhi Leonard, as a role player, but Kawhi Leonard's play style. Stanley Johnson, that's a hot take, and I really like that. But I'm so high on Asar Thompson for what we've seen this summer.
I really like that we brought up Asar Thompson because that was going to be the next media day quote that I was going to bring up. I really like this quote from Asar Thompson. Let me read it to you. I feel like we've played a lot, and I feel very ready. Obviously, you never know until you actually play in an NBA game in the NBA atmosphere, but I feel confident that I would be ready. And that's the confidence you want from a young player. We see a lot of young players, especially when they come out of the gate struggling, kind of shy away from their shot and shy away from their brand of basketball. And I don't want to see that from Asar Thompson. I think Asar has that confidence. He has that moxie, and I think that comes a lot from coming from that Overtime Elite program, that they really were able to help build up his moxie and build up his confidence, where he's not a Draymond Green. No hate against Draymond Green, but I think we all can agree Draymond Green's a very cocky player. I'm not saying Asar Thompson's going to become that. He just knows and he trusts himself and he has confidence in his shot. Where if he goes 0 for 5 behind the arc, he's not going to stop shooting the 3-ball. He's still going to shoot that 3-ball, and he's still going to trust his shot and trust his instincts.
Just for context, I want to give folks a little bit of context when Asar Thompson said we played a lot together. This team, and I'll give props to Monty Williams for this, and this team was already a close-knit group thanks to Dwayne Casey. But Monty Williams came in. This entire team was there for his press conference, except for Bojan. He was getting married. Congratulations, Bojan.
Congratulations.
Bojan. I love you.
If you're watching this.
But this team plays so much basketball together in the offseason. The Rico Hines runs were dominated by the Detroit Pistons. Asar, Ivy, Duran, Cade, all there and all hooping out. So this team, thanks to Monty Williams, is very, very, very close-knit, and that is something you need when you're trying to grow a team. But I want to move on from Media Day to some potential lineups we want to see. Now, I'll float out mine. I want to see Cade Cunningham, Jaden Ivey, and then this is where it gets a little tricky, because the 3 and 4, you could plug in Asar Thompson, Bojan Bogdanovic, you could plug in Isaiah Stewart. I think we saw last year with Bojan Bogdanovic, he really hampered Jalen Duren on the defensive end because Jalen Duren was doing all the defensive front court work. So I think the surefire starter, at least to start the season, is Isaiah Stewart. I think you just paid him. You got to start him at least to start the season. Things can change. We're still rebuilding. We're not contending yet.
It's like the Tigers paying Javi Baez. Like he might not be the best, but you got to play him. Stewart is the best.
Have more of an impact than Javi Baez.
At least Isaiah Stewart has room to grow.
I'm just saying that you got to pay the man to play.
But also
I might have missed this, but who did you say was going to be your starting 3?
Well, I was going to get to that.
Okay.
So I have Duren and Stewart. I think the starting 3. I love you, Asar, but we need Bojan. Look, if you play Asar and Isaiah Stewart and Duren and Ivy and Cade, the spacing, no bueno. And I know people are going to be like, well, that might be your best line. Sure, but Bojan averaged 21 points per game last season. Bojan was a, 40% three-point shooter? You need that type of three-point arm in your starting lineup. You're not starting Joe Harris over Bojan. Sorry, you're not. I love you, Beef Jerky Joe. But Bojan averaged 21 last year for us. He gets a starting nod. But I think it's Bojan at the 3, but it could change. If Asar is hooping off the bench, maybe he's like, you know what, I want to be the 6th man of this team. Or we integrate him into the starting lineup and move Bojan to the 4 if it doesn't hamper Duren too much. We might be able to test that a little bit, especially in the preseason.
I really like that comment, or moving Asar to the bench, because if you have Asar on the bench, he's also going to be out on the court a lot with Joe Harris. And we talked about Joe Harris being a very good shooter, so I think if Asar is on the court with Joe Harris, he's going to also learn a lot from Joe Harris. So that's going to help the development of Asar Thompson as well. So I really like your lineup that you have, and I think that could very possibly, Anthony, be a lineup for the Pistons on opening night. But I do have one question for you. Who would be, hypothetically, if Bojan's your 3, if Isaiah Stewart's your 4, who's your 6th man on this team?
Who's my 6th man on this team?
Would it be Monte Morris?
I was going to say Monte Morris is intriguing because he has the experience. He's a Detroit native from Flint. He's already really working in the community, which is nice to see.
Another name that you could throw out there, James Wiseman.
I don't think Wiseman's the 6th man yet. He's got to earn it. He's really got to earn it.
Okay.
I think the 6th man, if I'm thinking about it, it's either Burks. I think Burks gets it for seniority reasons.
Okay.
Burks, because he is a hot hand off the bench.
He is. And he was that way for the Pistons in the past, too.
Burks or Asar.
Okay.
I think those are your 2 6 men. Maybe you throw in Wiseman if he has a good start to the year. But to start the year, I think it's either Burks or Asar. But I would not be surprised to see Monte in there. I'm a big Burks guy. I love Burks. And he let Monte have his number 5. Burks is now number 14. So that's what I would say to that question.
All right. So I wanted to say my ideal starting lineup is Cade Cunningham at the 1, Jaden Ivey at the 3. I'm gonna have to say Bojan Bogdanovic, just because when Cade is getting double teamed, Ivey's getting double teamed, they can toss it out to Bojan and he can knock a shot or something. So I like Bojan. Obviously, Beef Stew, just because of his physicality and he can knock down shots. Isaiah Stewart can knock down shots.
He was shooting the ball a lot. He was really willing to shoot the ball last year.
Absolutely. He's willing to shoot, but at least, unlike with Killian Hayes, he makes his shots.
And his percentages looked really bad because of that shoulder injury he was dealing with last year, and he kept trying to shoot. And part of me was like, I love the reps. Part of me was like, your shooting percentage is going way down. But I digress. He's still working on it.
My ideal lineup for the Pistons, Cade at the 1, Ivy at the 2. This is like my first half my first half of the year lineup. Cade, Ivy, Boyan, Stewart, Duren. Again, when Cade and Ivy are double teamed, kick out to Boyan, he'll get you a 3 or a deep 2. But my second half lineup, and I'll get to you guys in a second, Cade, Ivy, maybe a Sore, Stewart, and Duren. Just Cade, Ivy, Stewart, and Duren should say it's that small forward that's going to switch around this year.
So you would kick Bogdanovich to the bench before Stewart?
No.
I'm saying for the second half lineup because you said that Stewart would start at the 4.
I said Stewart's going to stay in the lineup for the whole year.
Yeah, but
he's
that
saying
means
you
that
kick Boyan to the bench if you start Asar.
If you start Asar, this is what I'm saying. If you start Asar the second half of the year, that would be kicking Boyan to the bench.
If Boyan underperforms and
Okay.
Asar Thompson comes off the
I
bench
could see
hot.
that. I could realistically see that, though, too.
I think Beef Jerky also has a chance to start, too, at the end of the year.
Yeah.
If he is outperforming Boyan and is shooting at a high clip, and he's putting up 12, 13, 14 off the bench like he did in Brooklyn, why not?
I was going to say another name that's really going to intrigue me for the Pistons. He's questionable with an injury right now. Anthony, you'll have to remind me what that injury is in a minute. Isaiah Livers.
Ooh, and I have a quote on Livers, too. But
Livers
I
is a grade 3 high ankle sprain. He's out 6 to 8 weeks.
Yeah. Okay.
It took Reggie Jackson 3 months to get through that injury back in 2018.
So I really think, again, going to the leadership from Joe Harris, I know I've talked about it a lot, it's going to help Asar Thompson develop, but I really think once Livers is able to recover from that ankle sprain, that having Joe Harris could also help Isaiah Livers as well and show Livers this is how we play basketball at an NBA level, at NBA speed, because I think that's something I've seen Livers struggle with a lot is being able to adapt to the NBA speed. We saw him kill. We saw him do really well at Michigan back in college, but we all know that college speed versus NBA speed's a lot different. It's the same thing with college football, and that's why a lot of players who are really good in college struggle at the next level because it's a lot faster. You got to think a lot more on your feet, and I think that's something that Joe Harris can show both Asar Thompson and Isaiah Livers.
I think that's also why he got traded here, or why we tried to trade for him too. Is he's only here for 1 year.
Yeah.
We're not going to extend his contract on. I don't think unless he signs here for a minimum that we're going to re-sign him, but I think he was brought here for the veteran leadership and to be able to show these young guns off the bench.
I have a quote from Omari Sankofa of the Free Press
I love
about
you, Omari, if you're listening. I love you.
About Isaiah Livers from Monty Williams. He's a two-way guy, smart. He can play with the ball better than I thought. Watching him play pickup before we started training camp. He can make a pocket pass. He knows how to play in .5. He does a number of things well, and he's smart. Talks on defense. And then this is him talking about his ankle sprain. It's unfortunate that he had an injury because he was having a great summer. He's been working on his body. We can't wait to get him back because he's going to add some value on both sides of the ball. And Monty loves this guy.
All right. So I just wanted to say there's one big piece of the Pistons this year that we are completely forgetting about, and that is Marvin Bagley. We saw what the guy can do when he's healthy. He's a good lob threat for Cade. I genuinely want to see what he can do as a lob threat for Cade. Because if he and Cade can develop some chemistry, is kind of in the pick and roll, I could see Marvin Bagley having a bigger role in this team and maybe potentially being our backup.
I think the one thing with Marvin Bagley, it's himself getting in his own way. I think he lets the critics and the social media goers kind of get to his head a little bit. Even if he said... You can tell when a player's in their own head and they're like,
absolutely.
After a couple missed shots, he's like, oh, here we go again. Twitter's going to have a field day, like something like
and I think,
I've been there before, and I think that the only thing getting in Marvin Bagley's way, because he's a talented player, is his self and his own mindset.
And the fact that it's constantly going to be brought up that the Kings drafted him over Luka Doncic. That's not going to help his
I don't like when people do that because you can't control when you get picked. Look,
exactly.
They might not have been good, but that's not your fault. Like, people saying Anthony Bennett, like, oh, you were a bust. Don't do that. It's not his fault. It's not his fault he got drafted there first.
It's the pressure that the media gives him.
Yeah. I think that's something that Monty Williams can help with a lot is being able to get Bagley out of his own head, because Monty Williams has coached in some of the biggest games. He coached, was it the 21 finals?
Yes.
21 finals against Milwaukee. He ended up losing that series
such a
with
fun
Phoenix.
series.
That's probably one of the best finals series in recent memory.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The only
I would
one
say
that I
so, yeah.
think comes close is Toronto Golden State back in
Ooh,
19.
That was
the only
some
thing
peak
about that series
basketball.
is just the injuries.
Kawhi
dude.
Leonard, Klay Thompson,
Well, I don't think Kawhi,
Kawhi was never
in-
hurt.
Kawhi was
Kawhi
never
and
hurt.
KD
It was
were hurt.
KD. It was
Klay.
KD got hurt in
I
like the
think a
semis.
couple-
Came back for Game 5.
Yep,
Got hurt.
Yep.
And DeMarcus Cousins was
And
hurt
DeMarcus,
too.
but he
Well, DeMarcus
sucks.
Cousins wasn't really a factor
Going back
on
to
that
my
team.
point, though, Monty knows what it takes to be the best team in the NBA. He coached one of the best teams in recent memory in the Western Conference, being the Phoenix Suns back in 21. So he knows what it takes, and he knows that there's always going to be Twitter trolls. No matter how much people dislike the Twitter trolls, there's always going to be people saying, "Oh, you should have done A instead of B," or "You should have started Isaiah Stewart over Marvin
There's always
Bagley."
been those trolls.
There's
It's just
always
not
going to be
as-
that, but you mentioned it. We see Marvin Bagley getting in his head a lot, and I think it's that humanistic standpoint that I talked about with Monty Williams, is he's going to be able to say, hey, don't listen to these people, don't listen to these Twitter trolls, just continue playing your game of basketball and continue playing your brand, and it's going to come, and that shot's going to start coming for you.
All right. Well, we've talked about our potential lineups. We've talked about what we're going to see from these players and what we want to see from these players, but those players come with a season outcome, and the way those players play come with a season outcome. Now, me and Ryan, we've gone over our season expectations. You guys don't want to hear from us again.
No.
But we have two fellow card guys on the set with us today. Derek, Isaac, what are your guys' expectations? I'll start with you, Isaac. What are your guys' expectations for this season? I'm talking record, where we end up in the postseason possibly. What just you think's going to happen this year?
Well, obviously basketball's a very unpredictable sport, so anything can happen. It's any given day, anything can happen. But I'll tell you what I expect of this team. You can't expect someone to be healthy, but you can say I would very much like to see a full year of Cade Cunningham, ideally playing maybe 75 games, somewhere in that range. Same with Ivy, same with Duren. That core three, obviously including Asar. I want to see them play together, develop some chemistry, get better on the defensive end. I want to see some development from obviously Duren. I want Cade Cunningham to. I would love a Cade Cunningham All-Star season, but obviously the NBA is stacked, and obviously it's Detroit versus everybody. So getting
I think
him
he
into
could do it though. If he puts
Absolutely.
up the stats, like
Oh,
top
if he
5,
puts
8,
up the
and 8.
stats, especially coming back from that injury, I think a lot of people would vote for him. And I
Drew
think
Holiday
he's,
made it last year. So.
I think he's won a lot of hearts, or he's won over a lot of people in the city of Detroit.
If
And
Andrew,
Absolutely.
if Andrew Wiggins
And in
can
the
start
NBA.
for an NBA All-Star team, then anybody
and
can.
so can
go
Cade
for an All-Star
Cunningham.
team.
Okay, but back to my expectations.
So what are you thinking record-wise?
Record-wise, 17 wins last year. That's correct.
17 and
The
65.
bare minimum is doubling that win total.
34.
Anything less than 34 wins is a complete and utter disappointment.
Yep. Okay. And do you think we're going to make it to the play-in at all?
I think so. I think if everything goes somewhat smoothly, we're going to make the play-in. 10 seed, maybe
10
maybe
seed.
barely miss. And obviously, if we barely miss and we have a lot of great development from our players, that is okay.
If
That
we're
is
playing
perfectly
games that
okay.
aren't regular season games or in-season tournament games, I think that's a win. But Derek, what are your expectations, buddy?
Yeah, I completely agree with everything Isaac said. I think 34 wins is very reasonable. I'm going to take it a little bit higher. I want to see at least 40 to 41 wins. I want to see at least 500 basketball from these Pistons. I think they have the talent if everyone's able to stay healthy. They have the talent. They have the depth to be able to do it. So I'm saying about the 40 to 41 win range. I'm going to say about the 9th or 10th seed play-in tournament. That's a big win for me. I can't wait to see playoff basketball back in the city of Detroit.
Oh, man. I think we're all going to a playoff.
Absolutely.
we are
Or
spinning.
Or playing.
Yep.
Either way,
Yep.
it's going to
Yep.
be electric.
My bank account ain't ready for it. Okay. But anyway, I do expect us to make the play-in. Like, it is possible. We have the talent, we have the coaching, we have the depth. We can do it. Anything's possible. It's a new season of NBA, and I'm absolutely excited for this year of Detroit basketball. Now, it's obviously Rome was not built in a day, my friends. Rome was not built in a day.
You're
So
100%
we got to
right.
take some time and just say this team is building something special. And if you can't see that, then it's just We're building something special, and great things are going to happen out of this team in the next 3 to 5 years. So let's bring back the Pistons from the 80s, the 90s, the 2000s. Let's bring it all back. It's coming together, and I'm here for it. All of our Detroit sports teams are coming together. Wings are looking up. Tigers are looking up. Pistons are looking up. And Lions looking up. Just overall, the 2020 decade, it's going to be an exciting year for Detroit sports, and we're all here for it.
I completely agree with what he said, man. I think the Pistons have made all the right moves. I think Troy Weaver's an absolute masterclass of a general manager. Some of the moves he's made and some of the trades he's made has just left me in awe and left me in disbelief. But I want to see a lot of development from Cade. I want to see development from Ivy, from Duran, from Stu. And I know you mentioned that, Isaac, but there's one other thing. It slipped my mind. But I think the biggest thing for me is I want to see development. I'm excited. I'm so excited. Oh, this is what I was going to say. I'm so excited to see a healthy Cade. This is probably the most excited I've been for Detroit basketball.
Since 2018, I
Yeah,
think.
2018, arguably in my lifetime. So I'm really excited for Pistons basketball to be back, and I'm so excited for Sunday, Anthony. It's going to be fun. I know it's just preseason, but it's going to be fun to have basketball back.
Well, Isaac, you mentioned the 2018 team. Let's talk about them. Now, I know we're talking about the current team and what's going to be happening.
But who doesn't love some good old nostalgia?
Let's reminisce on the last playoff team, Detroit. I think the Pistons, or Detroit has seen at LCA, right? The Red Wings haven't made the playoffs since.
You're right. Last playoff team in LCA.
2019 Pistons were the only team in LCA that play a playoff game.
It's been the last playoff game in the city of Detroit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
sad thought, man.
Let's go back to that team. That team was built of dogs. The big one, Blake Griffin. The all-board ripping Blake Griffin. Shout out John Mason. What do you guys remember about that season that just stuck out, other than Blake Griffin? Because we all know 24.5 points per game, improving that three ball, taking this team on his back, quite literally playing on one leg in the playoffs for the city of Detroit. What do you guys remember about that season that just makes it, I want to go back to 2018?
The excitement, the atmosphere down at LCA. I'll never forget when the Pistons traded for Blake Griffin, and I remember calling my uncle and saying, holy smokes, we just got Blake Griffin. Like, Pistons basketball is back, whatever. And just that excitement, that atmosphere, being able to go down to LCA and have a packed crowd, have a sellout crowd there, and just the noise and the atmosphere. And I think that's something that went back when we were in the pandemic and when it was a piped-in crowd noise. No one liked that because it wasn't that true atmosphere. It wasn't the true getting into an argument with the guy next to you who's wearing a Knicks jersey back at the Palace of Auburn Hills. It's not like I'm talking about that from personal experience or anything. But
it may have been an experience of mine.
Weren't you the one? Do we not bring up Charlotte?
No, we don't bring up Charlotte.
Okay, we're not going to bring up Charlotte. But the thing that is the most nostalgic for me is that atmosphere and that noise at LCA, and I'm so excited for opening night and to be able to hear that again.
I have two things, and they're both Blake Griffin related. One, I remember I was at my grandma's house. We had a family dinner that night, and my dad told me Blake Griffin might be traded to the Pistons. It's a rumor, though. I was like, if so, I'll be so excited. And I remember we finished up dinner, and we were leaving, and my dad told me that Blake Griffin got traded to the Pistons, and I was like, we're going to win the championship. I'm so excied. And I remember
that's how I felt, man.
So I'm not the only one that felt that way.
I felt that way, too.
The next day, I was with my friend John. Shout out, John. We were waiting outside of the bus stop, and I was like, what do you think about Blake Griffin? He goes, I hate that trade. I don't like it. Tobias Harris has been playing solid. Avery Bradley, although he's been in a slump, I still like him.
Looking back at it, that trade was very bad.
That trade was bad.
Because that pick turned into Shai Gilgeous-Alexander after a couple more trades. That pick was technically either Shai Gilgeous-Alexander or Miles Bridges, plus Boban. I miss Boban and Avery Bradley.
Bobby and Toby, man. What a duo.
Blake Griffin
duo.
So yeah, and then the second memory was I went to Game 3 of the Bucks-Pistons series.
I'm so jealous
and
of
I
you.
remember it was like 25 minutes before the Pistons were supposed to go up on the floor, and John Mason was like, fans, Blake Griffin is back, and the whole arena erupted.
I got chills thinking about that.
I got chills thinking about it, too. It was such a fun game, although we lost by 20. Still, Blake Griffin playing on one leg, refs you suck chant. That was probably one of the greatest moments of my life.
Taking in the chant.
I love it.
I remember
I
that.
miss it. That was the greatest season I've experienced as a Pistons fan.
All right. I will say the best part of that season was the optimism we had. Going into that season,
yeah.
I had serious optimism that this team could be a title contender. Obviously, we weren't. We were an 8 seed, but just like I watched like maybe every game that year. I'd say maybe around 70, 75 games I watched on my TV. Yeah, I just like went on, tuned into every game, like saying like, hey, we have a legit chance to win this game, and we have something special going. A lot of players that I'm excited to watch, like obviously Blake Griffin was fun, Andre Drummond, great year.
Dre Jerome.
Ah, man, what a time that was.
Really?
And obviously Reggie Bullock, Reggie Jackson, Luke Kennard had some good moments too. Ish Smith off the bench. Ish Smith.
Ishmael Smith.
Can't forget that game
champion.
against Memphis where Ish Smith basically carried us to save us from elimination. You can't forget that.
I was at that game. We came back from 30.
Why
against...
are you at all the games I wish I was at?
I got lucky.
You're
I
a
was
lucky
like
man,
the last
Ryan. You're a lucky
week
man.
of that season. It was
Is
so much
Ryan with going to Pistons game like me going to Tigers games where I'm just like at every huge
It
event?
looks
Yeah.
like it, but I think mine is a game I went to, and it wasn't necessarily that 18-19 season. It's Blake Griffin related. I went to Blake Griffin's first game as a Piston.
I remember that. That was with
Memphis
Cooper.
Grizzlies
That was with
versus-
Cooper. I remember
yep,
that.
Memphis Grizzlies versus Pistons. We won that game, and just when you walk in, I mean, we got shirts that said Blake Griffin, welcome to Detroit. It was great. The atmosphere was great. I mean, when he was announced by John Mason, ooh, chills. It's probably that and just being able to play meaningful basketball. I think that was a really big one for me. Just especially growing up at the Palace watching those teams, it's like, I don't know, we're not really playing for much until 2016, and then I took a little hiatus, and then we got back with it with Blake Griffin, but
I just wanted to say that obviously looking at it now, the Blake Griffin trade was a complete desperation move by Stan Van Gundy to keep his job. Obviously, he got fired after that year in the
and then we had to
trade.
deal with Ed Stefanski for 2 years.
Oh, man. Ed Stefanski.
What a fun time in my life.
That was miserable, to say the least. But yeah, obviously getting Blake Griffin here, even though the trade wasn't good, Blake Griffin brought meaningful basketball and a good basketball team to the city of Detroit for a year. Like, obviously, like the fact that like we're still nostalgic about a maybe 500 team from like 4 years ago just kind of says that we've gone through a lot of suffering, and us Pistons fans, we're ready to win. We're ready to win. I think this young group of guys led by Cade Cunningham is ready to win. So, like, I am very hopeful for this team and their future. We got to be patient, but something special is brewing in Detroit. I will tell you guys that.
Looking back on that season, I think one of the things, and I talked about that atmosphere, and I talked about how excited I am for it, but also being able to play, I think it was you, Ryan, who mentioned being able to play meaningful games in the month of April. And that's what that team was able to do. They were able to play meaningful games in the month of April, into March, into April. And I remember I have this random memory of being down at my grandparents' house down in Florida for spring break, and we threw on a Pistons game. I couldn't even tell you who it was. They were a couple games away from elimination, and they ended up winning that. It might have been the game that you were at where they came back from
Ishmael
They
Smith.
came back from 30. Ish Smith was the one that
it was
carried that.
It was that game.
It was
I remember
awesome.
that. But I remember just being excited about Pistons basketball, and I think that's what makes me so looking forward to this season is being able to look forward to Pistons basketball and just have it back and have winning basketball back in the city of Detroit.
Now, as Derek mentioned earlier in our show, Sunday we got Detroit basketball's back on Sunday.
Yeah,
It
let's
may be
go.
during
Let's
go!
It may be
Phoenix,
during the
baby.
Lions
Can't
game.
wait.
It may be during the Lions game, but hopefully it's not a game by then in our favor, and we can toss on the Pistons comfortably. But then again, it's the Lions, so who knows? We have a game Sunday against the Suns of all teams, the former employer of our head coach Monty Williams. Just looking at that game, the starters are probably going to be Cade, Ivy, and maybe a start because it's preseason, but probably Boyan.
I can see it. I think it's going to
Boyan,
happen.
Stewart, Duren. I think that's just what it's going to be. I think that's what he's going to roll out with and start with. But we're going to see a lot of tests and seeing what works here, what works there. Do they play good? I think Cade plays a lot to get back into the groove. He might not play a lot towards the end of the preseason, but this first game at home, I definitely think he's going to play a lot in. But that's Sunday, 3 o'clock, Bally Sports Detroit. The legendary George Blaha and Greg Kelser, that famous duo.
Man,
they will
do
be
I
on
miss
the
his
call.
voice. Do I miss
They will
his
be on the
voice.
call, and Good evening, folks.
Welcome to
That's
another
your
exciting night of NBA
NBA
He's
basketball.
going to say another exciting edition because it's the afternoon. But nonetheless, 3 o'clock, Bally Sports Detroit. It's going to be a fun one.
That brings a
But-
smile on my face.
That's all we have for today's show, ladies and gentlemen. Join us later tonight, 6:30 on CMU Club Hockey Network. Me and Derek have the call from Munn Ice
Let's
Arena
go.
on the beautiful campus of Michigan State University. We'll be calling that one between the CMU D2 women's hockey team and the MSU D2 women's hockey team. It's going to be a fun one. Join us. And then Ryan, you're on the call with our good buddy Reagan Cleves.
Yes, sir. I'm so excited.
At what, 7:30? Is that when you
Set
guys start?
8 p.m.
8 p.m. puck drop at Suburban Ice Arena at the beautiful Michigan State University with my buddy Reagan Cleves. Be there, 7:30 broadcast. I'm color. Reagan's play-by-play. I'm
Two
excited.
amazing games.
It's going to
Anthony.
be a fun night.
You guys
of
don't
hockey.
want to miss
Hockey-
these games. You don't wa-
Hockey for Central this year has been so excited. Men's
Oh,
team's
yeah.
3-1, women's team's 2-0. I say it all the time on the broadcast, Anthony. I'm so excited for this. There's no place I'd rather be than either Suburban or Munn. Luckily enough for me, I get to call with you at Munn tonight.
The Lake Orion duo's back at
Lake
Munn
Orion
Arena.
duo is back,
back.
whether they like it or
There.
not.
Well, thanks for hanging out with us. This has been episode 2 of Count That Baby and a Foul on 91.5 The Mountain, YouTube, and wherever you find your podcasts. We will be back with you next Friday, same time, same place, maybe new faces, who knows? For my buddy Ryan Donnelly, our guests, Derek Steele and Izaak Haffenden, I'm Anthony Schulte. So long, everybody.
I love you, Mom and Dad.